if we want to be in this role of driving a specific outcome for ourselves and for the team and for the practice, that we have to take ownership of all the pieces. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Physician Growth Accelerator, a show where we break down your medical practice systems into vitals, give you the tools to diagnose root cause of what may be restricting your growth, and most importantly, prescribe what to do about it. I'm your host, Zed Williamson, and I believe every system is perfectly designed to get the result it gets. And I believe that there is freedom in that statement. If you are dealing in business and you're dealing with something that you don't like right now, our brain tries to just say, well, that's happening to me. There's not a lot of value in that approach. It's better for us to say, okay, this is a purposeful outcome, a perfect one from the system that's designed to create it. Because once we can wrap our head around that concept, then we can look into the system and identify what needs to be tweaked. Where are the constraints? And then we can tweak them, generating a result that is more what we want to achieve. Now, I want you to think about your practice, and I want you to think about your staff. Sometimes these things, when I present it this way, it can sting a little bit because you might nod your head and go, hey, you know what, Zed, I like that. I like the idea that this is something that's in my control. And then I say something like, hey, if you have employees that are not bought in and you feel like they're doing just the minimum needed to get by, it's because that's a perfect outcome of your current system. Ouch. It's okay. Once we understand that, now we can do something about it. So today, I want to tackle a belief that you might have about your current staff. And there's people that you love to death and you trust, and they've been important to you. And there may also be team members that you feel like they don't carry their weight, but you don't know what to do about it because you've had a hard time finding people. And you just start to believe something about them, that that's all that they can achieve, that there's nothing more. They're not bought in, they never will be. You can't expect much more out of them. So if those are beliefs that you have now, over the next few minutes, I'm going to challenge them and hopefully give you the tools so that you can walk away today believing that you can get more out of all of your employees in a positive way that is beneficial to you, them, practice, and your patients. So let's dive into what can create this specific scenario. First of all, sometimes when we hire people, we don't necessarily have the greatest onboarding process or training. And it's a little bit of like you just get tossed in and you figure it out. And so you end up hiring people who are good at doing that. And you appreciate them. But sometimes what happens when you hire people like that is you don't measure them very much. And they can get to a point where they don't really know if what they do matters. Now, I don't know if you've ever felt exhausted. And I don't mean that you ran up a mountain. I mean, end of the day, just exhausted mentally. That exhaustion typically is not from any physical activity. It's typically because you've spent a lot of brain time in something that you just don't really know what the purpose is. You don't know what you're truly trying to achieve. It's like treading water, but no actual goal. This can happen a lot with your staff. They may not know what the purpose of their activities are. And I'll tell you, if you spend 7, 8, 9 hours a day doing things, even if it's really easy things, and you don't know what the purpose is, that is exhausting. And that is on their leadership, which could be you, it could be managers. It has to be clear. It has to be obvious. Jennifer, you are here to accomplish this. This is important because of that. And then you have to do it over and over and over again. That's what helps Jennifer understand what value exists in the role she has, the part she plays in this big thing you call your medical practice, the impact that she has on the lives of everyone else. So that's just the start. is, does everyone in your organization absolutely know the purpose of their role and the things that they are responsible for? And I don't mean purpose like, well, you just got to do it. It's your job. I mean big picture. How is it connected? How is it connected to helping patients feel better? How is it connected to building a stronger, independent practice that allows you to put a moat around you and provide the best patient care possible? Jennifer needs to know. How does she impact things? Now, if you have done that, and you can say, Zed, they know. I talk about it all the time. They absolutely know what their role is and why it matters. And I don't get what I need out of the team. Great. How are you measuring them? And what I want you to think about is, how do they know? I don't mean how are you gauging that behavior. I mean, how do they go home at the end of every day knowing they did awesome, mediocre, or weak? What tool is in place for them to know those things? Is it possible that the only tool there is to know that they were weak? Is it possible that there's no tool and they have no idea? Is it possible that it could be any of the three and they never hear any feedback from anyone? Because once you have communicated consistently that something matters, how their role impacts the bigger picture, if it is not measured, they just don't believe you. And there's no real reason for them to do any more than the minimum that is expected. And this is something that can be frustrating because there are different personality profiles out there. And you might be saying to yourself, I don't need someone to come up and tell me this. I get it. I don't need that either. But that's not everyone in the world. People are different. People have different natures. And the way we can understand what their nature is so that we're feeding it properly, that's how you get people to, run through walls for you. They have to believe in what their role is. They have to believe in the impact it makes on the bigger picture. And then they have to get feedback that they're on the right path. When we drive, we have lanes. And you might look at that as a silly idea. Like, well, everyone should know which way you're driving. But guess what would happen if we take out those lanes? There'd probably be accidents. Well, think about our behavior. If we have no lanes, we're just going to start getting squirrely. We're going all over the place. And if they don't have that feedback, then they're going to start just doing the minimal to get by because they don't feel appreciated. They don't feel heard. They don't think they really matter. And it's exhausting. What's also interesting is what is allowed is also law. So think through that. What is allowed equals what becomes the law. And what's a kind of a funny way to play a trick on your brain is, let's say you were at a store, a clothing store, and someone walked in and they just grabbed, 4 coats off a rack and walked out. And let's say no one reacted to it. And it happened again. And it happened again. Would it matter that it was against the law to steal? No. Now that would just become the norm. If there was no reaction, if there was no accountability, if there was no saying, hey, you got to pay for that, then that would become the law. So what's being allowed in your practice that on paper you would say, well, no, we can't. You can't have that. But it's being allowed. Because allowing it means you're making it the law. You're saying it's okay to walk out with those coats. Now, this is tough because you want to get into this point where you're focused on the things that you love as the business owner and the leader. Let's say it's patient care. You just want to focus on that. And you say to yourself, like, why do I have to freaking worry about whether or not someone did this? It's what it is. Every system is perfectly designed to get the result it gets. if we want to be in this role of driving a specific outcome for ourselves and for the team and for the practice, that we have to take ownership of all the pieces. And a staff who doesn't feel like they're bought in, if you get that sense, you have to own it. And it's not a dig on you. It's not a failure in the sense of you're a bad person. It's just a learning opportunity. It's an opportunity for you to recognize, okay, what's missing here? These are good people. They care. They show up to work. What's missing? Do they know why they matter? And if they know, do they get a measurement? Do they know every day or every week that they're awesome, mediocre, or weak? And that's the key. And then lastly, am I allowing anything that has become a law that really is unacceptable? Are my managers allowing anything that's become a law that's really unacceptable? And if it is, you can own it. You can have a meeting, say, hey, it was really important that all of our staff show up 10 minutes before their shift. We took our eye off the ball. People started showing up a little later and later and later, and now it just feels like the rule is show up when you want to show up. So I'm saying today, that ends. You got to be here 10 minutes before your shift. And then from that point on, make sure that is measured and communicated. If someone's not there 10 minutes before the shift, you have to call it out. It has to be noticed because what we allow will become the law. If you ever want to look at your practice system or your practice vitals, go to physiciangrowthaccelerator.com and click on vitals. And we'll see you again on the Physician Growth Accelerator.